everyone, and welcome to this edition of Writers Infusion. I'm your host, Susan. I'm here with my fellow critiquers, Dave, Jen, Julie, Ed, and we are here today with Jack Hitchner. Jack's our guest today, who has submitted a story called A Soldier's Memorial. And before we get started, I just want to ask Jack about where he's from and about his writing background.
I grew up in Pittman, New Jersey, which has become fictionalized as Lawrence in some of my fiction. Lawrence, or Pittman, is the setting for my first novel, The Acolyte. I've also published 3 volumes of poetry, and I've been working on A Soldier's Memorial for, it appears, several years now. This is, I'm not sure what number this draft is, but it has gone from actually a fairly short novel to a longer one, which deals with the effects of war on an American family. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the current war on terror.
And what made you want to write about that?
My Woodway coach, whose name was Lefty Ewan, began to suffer nightmares in the aftermath of World War II and also Korea. That stayed with me. Also, having stayed with me is my son, who is currently in the United States Army. He will leave the military, as a matter of fact, this coming November 20th. John has been a part of the U.S. Army since 1996. It's been an emotional time for him and for his family, of course.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to do something about the effects of war on, again, a small American family.
I think that's really important. I study that a lot too. And you know what? It's escaping me. There's a great book, though, that's out there that is supposed to help people with dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I may not remember it today, but I'll make sure I post it with the episode.
Okay.
So why don't we have you read, and then we'll go from there.
What I'm going to read is actually about the first 1,500 words of chapter 1. It is not, in a sense, a complete story. It is just the beginning, or the introduction to the family.
Great.
Chapter 1. The Schuyler's, Homefront, 1945 through 1952. Corporal Philip Schuyler, 30 years of age, returned to the port of Philadelphia via Portsmouth, England, late September 1945. He was then transferred for evaluation and treatment at South Jersey Veterans Hospital at Colony Glen, 10 miles from our home in Lawrence. I, Gareth, his son, was 4 that fall, too young to be permitted inside the red brick facility for troubled veterans, too young to be permitted within the wrought iron fenced hospital grounds. I shook hands with my father for the first time on a mild October afternoon. My mother accompanied Dad across the lawn to the fence, their shoes scuffed oak and maple leaves like so many scarred knuckles and hands. My mother, Grace Schuyler, seemed calm as she walked with Dad in a kind of casual repose, her hand on his arm the way she had appeared in their wedding picture framed on the living room wall of my grandparents' house. Granddad Warren stood beside me on the sidewalk outside the fence. White elastic bands looped the elbows of his ubiquitous white shirt. Black suspenders held his navy blue trousers in place. My grandmother, whom I called Shazoo, my toddler's pronunciation of grandmother continued throughout my childhood into adulthood, had remained at home. Shazoo had kept her back turned to my mother when she had said, "I'll take care of things here, Grace. You tell Philip I'm thinking of him." My mother had shaken her head as if she did not agree with my grandmother's reason for not wanting to visit Dad. Now she seemed calm as she brushed back her brown hair above her ears and kissed my father lightly on the cheek. She stepped back as Dad approached the fence. His khaki pants nearly covered his sneakers when he reached out to me through the iron bars. "Hi there, Gareth. Good to see you, son." To Granddad, he said, "Hello, Joe. Thank you for bringing him." "He wanted to come, Phil." The palm of my father's hand felt warm, rough. He hefted my hand as if he was testing it. A milky white substance coated a corner of his mouth. He wiped away the white liquid with his left arm before he spoke again. I missed you, he said, kneeling on one knee on the grass and still holding my hand. Having had no clear memory of my father before he had shipped out to Europe, spring 1944, I squinted at his face. He smiled a sad, apologetic smile, his teeth yellow. Wish I could be out there with you, little man. He turned his head, covered his mouth with his arm, and coughed, a loose, phlegmy sound. When he looked at me again, his eyes brimmed with tears. Granddad put his hand on my shoulder. In a kind voice, he asked me, "You want to say something to your dad?" "I saw your picture in the newspaper," I said, recalling my father's stern military visage, front page of the Lawrence Weekly Reporter, our local newspaper. "Hometown soldier returns from the war." Dad cleared his throat again. "Be a good boy for Mom and Granddad and Shazoo. Help take care of things. I'll be home as soon as I can." "When?" I asked. He stood, taller it seemed than minutes ago when I had first seen him, even taller than the fence. "We'd better go back inside," my mother said to him, the way she had reminded me to put toys away and get ready for bed. She held Dad's arm and leaned her head against his shoulder again as they walked through the leaves toward a building with wire-covered windows. Which window was Dad's? That night when I asked my mother as she put me to bed, she said, "Dad's room's on the other side." That meeting with my father was my first clear memory of him, the man who would later teach me how to jab a punching bag, the man who would be my catcher in warm-ups in my grandparents' backyard, and the man who tried to stab one of my Babe Ruth team coaches with a screwdriver. Philip Schuyler arrived home to our small hometown of Lawrence, New Jersey by Thanksgiving 1945. No band to rouse, for he's a jolly good fellow. No local newspaper reported to inquire, "How does it feel to be home again, Corporal?" No cheering welcome home party to greet the returning soldier at my grandparents' white clapboard, black shuttered house at 122 Crestview Avenue, Saturday afternoon before the holiday. My parents did not own a house. They lived with my grandparents since before I was born. No kids my age, no teenage cousins, invited guests, adults only. A handful of overcoat-wearing neighbors, my grandparents' brothers and sisters, and my father's two brothers who made it known to Shazoo their preference for bourbon shots and beer instead of soda, tea, and coffee she served from the dining room sideboard. "Anything stronger for this occasion, Ms. Warren?" No one asked questions about combat Dad had witnessed in France and Germany. No one asked about the concentration camp his battalion had liberated in Poland. No one asked about his hospitalization at Colony Glen, and no one uttered the expression shell shock. I was my parents' only child, and the only child of Shazoo and Granddad. The only grandchild of Shazoo and Granddad. A boy who wondered if snow flurries beyond the windows would snowpack heavy enough to make a snowman. A boy old enough to complain but not rebel against my party outfit of gray flannel knickers, white shirt, and red and black bow tie. I stood by and watched and listened as relatives and friends shook his hand and patted him on the back. "Good to see you again, Phil." "Thanks. Good to be home." Instead of full army dress of creased trousers, woolen jackets with corporal stripes on the sleeve of his right arm, and marksmanship and European theater medals on the left breast pocket, Dad favored unmilitary black trousers, white shirt, and blue and white striped tie loose at the collar. With a closed-lipped smile, he shook hands, accepted hugs, and sipped tea my mother had poured for him. "What comes next? What will you do now, Phil? Going to take some time off, are you? Might be a good idea to let stores know you're home. They'll need help between now and Christmas. Wear your uniform, that'll impress him." Philip Schuyler was not interested in impressing people, not yet. "Not sure, I'll see," he replied. "Maybe catch an Eagles game?" "Maybe." He answered questions, made small talk about the holiday and the possibility of snow before Thanksgiving. He offered, "We're not sure yet, we'll see," to invitations from his two brothers to visit their families after Christmas. Philip Schuyler stood apart from the people who came to see him and wish him well. A man just under 6 foot, medium weight, complexion hospital pale, and black hair neat and parted on the left. A man who looked at the walls and furniture of my grandparents' house as if the wallpaper pattern of leaves and vines contained nothing of interest, as if the chairs and tables were obstacles to avoid, as if guests' voices were pitched a tone too loud, too happy. Couldn't you just keep it down a little, for God's sake? How you doing, Gareth? You having a good time, all these people? Dad asked after he poured warm cocoa for me in the kitchen. Yeah. You remember your aunts and uncles? They being good to you? Yeah. All right, you let me know if they're not being good. Granddad and I will take care of them. The gathering ended as snow flurries abated.
I'm really glad you read that. And you did a good job. It really brought me in. I mean, the
Thank you.
writing can do that too, but it was nice that you read it.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Sorry about my throat.
It's
I've been
fine.
fighting a cold for about 4 or 5 days.
One of us is always in that state.
Yes.
Questions, critiques, comments?
Right.
I usually don't go first, but this kind of writing really aggravates me because I can't help you. I simply can't. There's a kind of writing that I consider elegant, taking something difficult and making it look easy. What you've spoken about are emotions through simple descriptions of people, and we supply the emotions. It is just terrific. I'm sorry, I like to fire away at it, and I usually do, but I got nothing to help you here.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, one of the parts I really liked was on page 4, middle of the page. I would actually split this out as a separate paragraph. The sentence that says, "No one asked questions about combat." I mean, that,
Perfect.
it's
perfect.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like you're telling us things that people didn't say, and the poignancy of it,
Yeah.
and what this guy went through and what he's going through now.
It comes through.
It absolutely does.
You just,
It's terrific.
yeah, the non-answers are more powerful than any kind of phony, contrived response would be.
Yeah.
We'll see is a good answer,
Yeah.
because that's a non-answer.
Right.
And, when are you coming home, Dad? Later. I forget exactly.
Mm-hmm.
A non-answer. Nothing was clear. At the conclusion of this reading, there's nothing definite. And I can accept that because I can understand it.
Right.
You know, I'm drawn into the confusion, the horror that the guy went through. Just the list of things, the places in World War II that he went through. No wonder he came back messed up.
Right.
No wonder. And you just say, well, I get it.
My great uncle, my mother's cousin, as a matter of fact, was a veteran of World War I, veteran of shell shock. He spent some time in a hospital in Westchester, Pennsylvania, so that stayed with me. And a story that she told me about meeting him outside the hospital fence, I drew on that for,
Yes.
for the opening scene. It was a story that my mother passed on to me.
So let me ask you about that opening scene, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So this is being, the I in this story is a 4-year-old boy, okay?
Yes.
But obviously it's being written by this boy when he's grown up.
Yes.
And is writing back about it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, all right, I found myself thinking 2 completely contradictory things. One was, I wanted to see this from the eyes of a 4-year-old boy. Okay, in other words, what exactly was the 4-year-old boy going through? Like in the second sentence, second paragraph, where you say, I wasn't permitted to go inside the building or the fence or that kind of thing. To me, that could be a scene. I'm riding with my mother and my grandfather. My mother's told me where we're going. I get there, I can't go inside. I have to wait outside with my grandfather while my mother goes inside, and then my father comes out. In other words, that's one way to go. Okay, and the other way to go is kind of as you've done it. In other words, here is a grown man kind of looking back over the years, a little detached from the scene, but still sees himself in it.
Mhm.
So I wonder which, how, do you make that kind of decision? Do you want us to be like right in it with the 4-year-old, or do you want us to be kind of distant?
And I had the same exact reaction.
Your comment has been made to me by other people in the fiction writing group that I'm a part of. This particular voice came naturally to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I think, is why I kept it the way it is.
Yeah.
I see your point,
Right.
and I might be able to use a couple of references from it. But for now, I still like or am drawn to this particular voice.
I can see that. One thing I would suggest is, I think there are like little touches you can put in that would make it a little more poignant. For
Mhm.
example, you start off Corporal Philip Schuyler, 30 years of age.
Right.
It sounds like a newspaper article, okay? If you started out, my dad.
I wrote that too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Corporal,
had too.
yeah, Corporal Philip Schuyler. It's like,
Wow.
that tells us immediately, it's like, this isn't just some guy,
Yes.
this is my father.
Mm.
I wrote
If I
that.
could
Oh, sorry.
Oh, can I just,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So I thought that at the end of the second paragraph was your perfect first line. The first line that I would suggest is, I shook hands with my father for the first time in a mild October afternoon.
Oh,
Well,
that's
actually-
like,
I think that's a perfect first
I
line.
actually
Why don't take it?
was confused by that because I didn't know if that meant it was the first time he had met his dad, and his dad had been away for 4 years.
No,
So-
but maybe he had the polite or
But I didn't
gesture
know.
of shaking hands, because when he was younger, he wasn't able to.
I guess, but I didn't know,
Yeah,
one way or the
right.
other.
Formal
So,
gestures.
I guess, can I add to what Ed was saying? Oh, you were gonna go first. yeah.
go ahead. Okay, I'll add to what I said too.
All right, so, a few things. So I really liked it, so we'll just start off with that. And I agree with Ed, whatever voice you want to use is
Mhm.
whatever you want to use. I think you should write with what's comfortable or what you really want to do. I think that, I know when he first saw his dad, there were just details that, Ed was mentioning details. I think there's some details that you can add, even from, looking at it from the adult perspective.
Mhm.
So when your dad's walking towards you and you've either, maybe you haven't seen him since you were a baby, I would want to know that. What are you thinking as he's walking towards you? What does he look like from a 4-year-old perspective? Does he look weak? Is he skinny? Is he not the way you expected him to look? So how are you expecting him to be as he's walking towards you? Are you scared because you haven't seen your dad? Are you excited? And I was a little unclear on exactly like, they're walking, maybe I was the only one. They're walking towards us and you're kind of waiting here, so maybe
Right.
if you just draw that out a little bit and we hear about what you were thinking at that time, I think that would be really interesting.
Mhm.
And then, on the second, and just to talk about a couple of other details that I really wanted to know, when you got to the part where he's looking at the building, and is this the second page? No, this is the third page.
Page
I don't wanna
three.
go out of order too much, sorry. And another example of where I was thinking you could expand was at the third page where he's saying which window was dad's. And he's having this conversation, he's wondering that, he asks his mom.
Right.
That's really important, he's looking here, he's wondering where his dad's staying, he might be wondering what's behind the walls. So this is something to really elaborate on. So when you're talking to the mom, even if the mom doesn't answer a lot, what's he thinking about that? His dad's not home, what's going on with his dad? He knows he's been at war, so I would like to see that as a little scene as opposed to like a one sentence, my mom answered and then that's it. He didn't think of anything after that. And I really want to know what he's thinking. So those are just a couple of examples where I just wanted to know more. And then one more thing I'll say before I pass it on to someone else. When you went to, my pages are different, you had this whole introduction and then you started off with Philip Schuyler arrived home to our small hometown of Lawrence, New Jersey. I almost thought I was starting a whole new story. Maybe if it were just a new chapter, I would have been fine. But I was so thrown off by the little boy and the whole intro scene. And then the next scene, you're taking a step back to when he first got home. So I'm not saying you can't do it out of order, but I needed something to tell me it was a new chapter or something, just to reorient myself.
So in other words, Susan, the time between pages 2 through,
Where he tried to stab the coach.
right, that
To the,
paragraph.
right, that's right, to
Yeah,
right
that's-
here.
Right. I
It
follow.
was almost like you were starting a story again. So I don't know if this is just chapter 1 and chapter 2 or whatnot, but I just needed someone to tell me what was going on.
Maybe, when you say arrived home, you might say arrived home from the hospital. or something like that, to
Just a
indicate,
phrase.
like, he's been in the hospital for a few
Mhm.
weeks, and now he's home.
Right.
Something like that.
If I could dovetail what, or build on what Ed said and what Sue said, I agreed to start with my dad. And then the second paragraph, Gareth, his son, I found a little awkward, especially
Too
because,
formal?
on page 2, he greets and his father says, "Hi, Gareth." "Hi there, Gareth." So that's how we learn the boy's name. So it could be just an I was for that fall, because
Or
we're in the
even
march
just,
of the.
I was 4 years old.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
I like
I
that.
would like to also know his emotions. I thought at the very start that you want to make, and I wasn't sure if it was you or if Gareth or not you, to make it more personal, to give his gut reaction, to give dad's physique or dad's words, maybe compare him to a TV dad or a movie dad or a book dad, saying, well, so-and-so's dad is like this, why is my father not
Do they
acting
have
or
TV?
looking? Oh,
You've
But that's a
Good
good
question.
idea.
good
But
question.
he had seen his picture in the paper, and his picture in
So
the
his
paper was
picture in the
probably
paper.
taken, when, you know,
Okay.
he's in uniform,
Right.
he's
Looking
strong,
healthier, looking
he's
stalwart,
serious.
yes.
It's still a
And
good
like the
idea.
comparison between what he is now in that picture.
And then the book, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say in paragraph 3 on page 2, he makes the reference, Gareth makes a reference to the wedding picture. Her
Yes.
hand
Right.
is on
Yes.
the
That was
way
good.
she
Yes.
appeared in the
Yeah.
wedding picture frame.
And then,
But that's talking, I mean, that's good, but that's talking about her. It should expand to him. I mean, it's kind of like we're all saying, what's it like when his dad's first walking across,
Right.
and how does he feel, and what is he seeing, and what is he expecting?
I tried to suggest more than be outright with the reference, their shoes scuffed oak and maple leaves like so many scarred knuckles and hands. Wedding-
That's too, I don't know.
some of your phrasing is beautiful, it is, but I wanted, again, on the bottom of my page 2,
Mhm.
after the grandfather says he wanted to come, Phil,
Right.
part of my father's left hand. Having no clear memory of my father before he shipped out, I squinted his face. I wanted to see more or hear more of Gareth's emotions, just like Sue asked, was he frightened, was he happy, was he curious? Really want to know, get in his head how he's reacting to dad.
Okay.
A little bit,
Mhm.
not overwhelming, but a little
Right.
bit, and
So that's why I refer to the milky white substance
yes,
that he was drawn to.
But then he
And
doesn't
that was-
wonder
Mailbox?
about it.
yes.
I don't know, I know, what was that?
Mailbox.
Medication.
Oh. But he doesn't wonder, what is that, right? Why is this stuff I mean, that's like a 4-year-old would wonder that, right?
Yes.
My 4-year-old was
Let-
doing
let-
that.
No, you
Well,
have
my
all sorts of
6-year-old, but
jokes.
she would still ask that
Mhm.
question.
And then on page 3, my page 3, Dad cleared his throat, be a good boy for Mom and Dad in Shazoo, Granddad in Shazoo, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be home as soon as I can, that was beautifully worded, nice vernacular. When I asked, I thought maybe you need an adverb, when I asked enthusiastically, apprehensively, maybe he's apprehensive because Dad's coming home, it's going to change the whole dynamic of his household. And then Dad, the next sentence, he stood taller, it seemed, than minutes ago. I thought maybe you could add Dad's answer, his response in words or just a physical gesture. He may have shrugged, he may have stood up taller, just show us how Dad is reacting to his son's curiosity.
I thought you did a good job portraying the father.
Thank you.
He came across as kind and
Yes.
caring for his family, and I really liked that.
Oh, do you know, speaking of that, at the party, the dad is responding to everyone sort of automatically, and then he bends down to speak to Gareth, asking if he's having a good time. I'm wondering if you could describe how Dad's demeanor shifts between speaking with the grown-ups and speaking to his son, because I did notice a change there. It's beautiful. He does have compassion and softness for his son, and often men who are
Mhm.
more find it difficult to switch back into
Mhm.
kind, soft-hearted.
That's true.
Can I plead with you, Jack?
Here we go.
Gonna tell you to ignore everything.
Ignore everything that they said.
Oh!
This is clean and crisp. Don't clutter it up with, I think, unnecessary details, because the people who are saying add these details already know what the details are. And if they come through with the writing, they're irrelevant to the words. You don't need any more words.
I don't
You see,
know, I don't know
No,
what
I
he's
don't
thinking
know.
when
I
the
don't know
boy's
anymore.
walking across.
As far as I'm concerned, the story is, it works for me. It is clean, it's crisp, it's not cluttered with irrelevant, or what some people feel, relevant details.
Mhm.
The details to me come through clean and clear, and I can trace a line between point A and point B very easily. I can make the leap. I don't need to be led around with those details. So I'm begging you.
Don't listen to him.
Don't listen.
Yeah.
Go back and forth.
I'm gonna follow my gut.
There you go. Go follow your gut, absolutely.
Always.
There's a lovely book about writing memoirs by Natalie Goldberg. It's called An Old Friend from Far Away. And the subtitle is The Practice of Writing Memoir.
Mhm.
And I made a note of it, if that can help
This
you at
isn't
all.
a memoir, right?
Yes, it is.
No,
What
it's
does it
not.
say? It's not, it's a novel.
Oh, memorial, oh goodness, please
No, no.
forgive me.
Oh,
It's a
sorry.
novel.
Sorry.
It's a novel.
I have to
The
say, I
novel.
do wanna say how
No,
much
no.
I love the
Yes, ma'am.
paragraph on page 3 where,
Which
you know,
one?
that meeting with my father was my first clear memory of him, and says, showing how
Yes.
the Java punching bag, and you list these 2 nice memories, and then you go, and then you kind of wham us with, who tried to stab my baby, Ruth.
Oh,
Okay,
my
I got
God,
some screwdriver.
that's
So
That is an episode which will come later.
I'm hoping
Yeah,
you're gonna show that scene,
Oh, yeah.
because,
I know,
and
right?
I love that, like, oh my, you think, oh, the,
Right.
American apple pie, wait, screwdriver, what, stabbing? So I
Right.
loved that, that was a great kind of punch, at the right time.
When we were talking earlier about when I said I was a little confused between switching from when
Sure.
he goes to bed with the screwdriver and then he arrives home, is that whole scene before Thanksgiving? Because at first I thought it was Thanksgiving, and then I thought it wasn't based on something you said later, so I just needed to understand if this was a little get-together before Thanksgiving?
Yes.
It was, okay,
Yes.
that wasn't clear.
Oh,
to me.
Saturday afternoon
He's
before
being
the
welcomed
holiday.
home from the hospital, I
Yes.
Where's
thought.
it say?
The address that says Saturday
He's being
afternoon.
Oh,
welcomed
that's
home from the
right,
hospital.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I missed
that's
it.
what it came
Okay.
through clear.
Yeah, the welcome home party
Mhm.
to greet the returning
Yes.
soldier.
I think I got confused because it said no cheering welcome home party, and then there were people in the house.
And then there was a party, I wrote that too.
Well, there were people in the house, but
It's not
nobody
a
is.
party.
It's
It's
not
friends.
It's not a rousing gathering.
I don't
Mhm.
know, I think you need to add a couple of words there to make that clear, but that's just me. And again, those are little details, it wouldn't take a couple of words to fix it.
May I have your copies of?
Absolutely,
We
yes,
post-
yes.
Well, what we do
Sure.
is when we show it on the website, we
Mhm.
post the video, and then the marked up copies are right below that, so you can
Oh.
download all of
All right.
them.
All right.
Yeah, I scan all of them, so you have that. So I agree with what everyone's, maybe not Dave, because but that's you, that's normal. But I just, overall, I thought it was really good and very touching, and
Yes.
and because I could identify, I mean, not that I have to, but because I could identify with the father and feel such empathy from him right from the start, that's what makes me want to continue reading the story more than anything else. Yeah, I
Good to
mean, I
hear.
think
Thank
that's
you.
really, and that's really important to me. I mean, like I said, it's to anyone, you want to not identify with the character, but feel something for him. And I
And we'd
really,
like to hear about the other soldiers, all the other narrators'
And
voices.
so-
of the
right,
Army
the
War.
others too.
Yes.
The novel originally began with just one voice. I think Ernie read part of that. But as I went through it, revising, revising, I grew tired of just one voice, hearing things from one voice. So the novel, as it is now, yes, uses Gareth as a narrator, but also Philip at times. Also, Gareth's son Dan, who is in the military, and also the woman who becomes Gareth's wife, Catherine, becomes a narrator.
That's really
Great
important
story.
because you were talking about your personal associations with these fictional characters in your own life.
Right.
And when, you tell people, write what they know, and clearly you've had this experience, you've met these people, you can, and not just meet and internalize, you can get the words on paper that represent that internalization of emotions. It's just terrific. I don't often say that, and I feel funny saying it. It's against my.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it's, you've got a real knack to be able to not destroy something out there, but reflect it accurately back onto the page. It's terrific.
My own father was not in the military. He worked in a naval shipyard in North Philadelphia during World War II. So Dad was not a part of the military. My son John is. My great uncle, whom I mentioned, was. But really, no one else
But
in our immediate family.
But
was
you've
part of
taken that experience of those other people and made them very alive in my mind.
And this is done? Or is, I
It is-
mean,
it
it's
is
written
still-
from start to finish.
It is still in progress, Susan.
I would like a copy of the first published editions, signed, if you wouldn't mind.
You've got a deal.
I would too.
You've got a deal.
Here.
I did bring one copy of my first novel, which you're welcome to share.
Oh,
Thank
sure,
you.
that would be
That'd be
terrific.
great.
For us to keep?
For you to keep.
Is
yeah.
it signed?
Yeah, I can sign it.
It has to
yeah.
be signed.
Sure. Ernie did the cover for it. so-
Oh, that's terrific.
Lovely.
Ernie's off camera.
I'm smiling at him, yeah. Our live studio audience.
Does anyone have anything they want to add?
No,
Do you have anything you want to add?
no, I'm curious if any of you have any questions about things to come. If you're curious about any.
Oh, I
anything
definitely
that
keep
has-
reading. I definitely
Yes.
kept
Yeah.
reading.
I wanna see if he becomes a productive member of society. Does he work his way through the difficulties that he got in the war? And is that the final breath of the story, when he finally steps out and is now a productive member?
Well,
He
he stabs someone with a
becomes-
screwdriver.
Well, that's later, yeah.
Maybe productive stabbing though, benefit for good reason.
No, he does acquire a job, and he stays at that job, let's say, intermittently, because there are times when he has to go away again.
Mhm.
Ah.
And one reason why he does go away again is because of that attack that takes place on a ball field.
Oh, goodness.
So that's one sequence. But he does come back to a job. He does, there's no divorce as Gareth's grandmother hints at. He stays married. The marriage survives. Eventually the two of them go to
I don't know how much more I want to know.
okay.
No, I really mean that.
Okay, what I'm hearing now is something that I go against normally. These people are too nice. There's nothing evil, there's nothing negative, there's no harshness to the story.
There will be.
There will be, okay, that's, you need that kind of conflict to
Mhm.
highlight the story.
But I think that there's a glimmer of that with the whole screwdriver, like you kind
Right.
of drop
Oh,
that,
yes.
you drop that in there and it's like, okay, you know, Dad seems fine, he's very sweet with his son, but I still have that screwdriver in the back of my head saying, okay, but something's gonna go
It's
down
not all
soon.
puppies and unicorns.
Exactly, so I thought
No,
that was.
there is turbulence, there's personal tension, there's physical turbulence.
Drama, you need drama.
Yeah, I thought you did a good job of just creating a very sympathetic character
Yes.
in 5 pages, which would cause people to want to know what happens to them and to care about them. So and that's very
Absolutely.
easy to do, so I commend you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming
for
today.
bringing
me.
Thanks for
Appreciate
making the
it.
drive. That's great.
Take 140 on the way home, it's a beautiful ride,
We will.
New England ride.
I will thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone else for joining us for this episode of Writers Infusion. We will see you next time, and keep writing.